Since we moved, I've been working at some new facilities, and I went to help out one day at this facility, and it's in a rural county, a southern county, if you're from the South or have lived in the South. And I went to see this woman working on, she's limited with her arms and doing some strengthening. And she was still eating her breakfast when I went in, and I had only gone in to see her, and then I was driving to my job in Charlotte, so I had to kind of find a way to make my time work with her. And I knew she was cantankerous. She was grumpy. She was kind of cranky. She didn't really think therapy was going to do any good for her. So I'm giving her time to finish up her coffee or whatever. And connecting with people is important. So I'm looking around her room and I'm commenting on her pictures, and I see pictures of cats. So I started asking her about cats, and she started to tell me about the cats she had, and we're engaging in this conversation about cats. And eventually I was able to start working with her, um, get her arms moving and things, because I took that time to build a little rapport with her. And she got talking about different things then. She was opening up to me, and I can't remember the context of what she was saying, but she was just talking about some people in her family. I think there was somebody, oh yeah, she had a family member who's had a son who was a drug addict, and even as a grown man, he doesn't have his act together. He doesn't have a job. So she's sharing all this kind of stuff with me. And then she got talking something religious related, and she goes, because there's no Hondas in heaven. We'll all be in one accord. And I chuckled a little bit because I found that amusing. Um, and then she kind of got real. I mean, she was serious the whole time. She kind of said, "Well, it's true," and I was like, "Yeah," and And I, you never know with people. I'm there to build a rapport with them, to help them to get their therapy services, in her case, to minimize contractures in her arms and to keep the strength she had. She kept saying therapy's not going to do me any good. I said, well, sometimes it prevents it from getting worse. But and I try to respect people, their religion or where they come from, but it just kind of really threw me that there'll be no Hondas in heaven. We'll all be in one accord. And so I've heard, the saying of being in one accord. Don and I were looking this up, right? And
And we couldn't find the other side
we
of it.
couldn't find the other side of it. So it's hard to know. There was a little bit of a joke in there, but then I felt, a little bit, did I insult her by chuckling? But sometimes I just don't know. Is this a joke or is this real? And I've had the opposite situation where people were telling me jokes, and they're like, it can be difficult to figure these things out, but I meet so many different kinds of people that just what really stuck with me.
Probably be Toyotas there, though, I would imagine. Hello, this is Don,
And this is Gina with Focused Healthy Family.
and this is podcast number 131. And today we're looking at family caregivers versus professional caregivers and kind of defining the differences and understanding who a family caregiver is versus a professional caregiver. I got a frog in my throat, I think. And I'm very red today, apparently, but I'm
We worked on the lighting quite a bit to bring down Don's glow, but in person, he does not look that red, and he's not sunburned. He's really okay. We just couldn't correct the light to make him less red. So, talking about family caregivers versus professional caregivers. So, a lot of times people don't realize they're acting as a caregiver, right? It's my dad, it's my spouse, it's my brother. I've got to help them out. I'm doing these things just because they're family. They don't think of themselves as being a caregiver. And yet, um,
it's a job by
it
itself.
is. It is. My mom cared for my dad at home, brought in other caregivers, but he had to have someone with him 24 hours, 7 days a week. And it's a big responsibility. It's, like having a young child. And yet it's different because this is a full grown adult. This is someone who's lived a full life. And I just like to stress that even though cognitively, someone with dementia, advanced dementia especially, might be operating cognitively at the level of a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, whatever, a 6-year-old, they aren't a toddler. They aren't a child. They have lived a full life. And even with wherever they're at with dementia, they still need to be treated like an adult and with respect.
Well, that kind of brings up another point is I think the reason we don't take on the label of caregiver, you think about it, really caregivers also are parents when you're caregiving for a child, but we call ourselves parents instead of caregivers in that scenario. So I think it just kind of goes to play when we're dealing with a senior. It's hard to label ourselves as caregivers because we didn't do it as parents, even though we were. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
Yeah. And well, you hire someone to come to the house to help take care of your loved one, that's a caregiver, even if they're coming out a couple days a week to help give them a bath or something. If you go to a facility, if they live in assisted living, memory care, nursing home, wherever, there's caregivers there that work there to help care for them. And yet, if we are participating in that, if we are involved, as Don and I have been very much so with my father, operating as family caregivers, and there's can be pros and cons to this because some people listen better to family members. I've worked with lots of people who listen better to the therapists, and the family tells me, "Oh, they'll do this for you, but they won't do it for us." And we also we we want to not just be their caregiver, but we want to be there as a family member. Like I go to visit my dad, and I'm cleaning up his room, and I'm helping him in the bathroom, and I'm straightening out stuff, and letting staff know things that are not happening that should be. And it's like, okay, but I also need to just have visit time with my dad. I need to have times when I go and just hang out with him. Like I brought him cantaloupe today and I was going to sit there and share cantaloupe with him. And he was really sleepy. He ate his cantaloupe and I was going around the room cleaning stuff up and labeling things because those things need to get done. Um, and yet, yeah, that balancing act of, okay, when am I there just as his daughter and to visit with him and versus being in there and taking care of things.
well, and if you remember, your dad at certain points would say that your mom was two people. That there was the caregiving mom, wife, and then there was the wife. I guess I don't know.
I'm not sure if that's what he meant when he said that.
Well, yeah,
We're
but I
not really
mean,
sure. He has delusions and hallucinations, and we're not sure if he thought
but
he
you do
had
kind
two
of you
wives.
do play that role when you're a caregiver. A lot of times, if you're the spouse,
Mhm.
you are the spouse, but you're also the caregiver, and they blend. They have a center point, but they also are kind of two separate kind of roles at the same time.
Right. And it's kind of a fine line to walk, especially if you are the spouse, of what, that's a whole nother conversation of
Well,
just
yeah,
as far as how your relationship changes when
oh
it's your
yeah,
spouse and now you're their caregiver. So we'll kind of table that for a different
yeah.
discussion. But Don, you found some
Well,
different statistics and facts.
yeah, and that one of the things that kind of I stood out. This comes from the Caregiving in the U.S. 2020 report published by the National Alliance for Caregiving and AARP's Public Policy Institute. First one is 53 million Americans are providing unpaid care for a relative or friend.
53
3
million
million.
Americans.
You know,
Okay.
and that's got to be
53.
growing too, because this is from 2020.
That's from 2020.
Um, but then the other thing that there's two statistics in here that I guess kind of go together, but they talk about 54% of family caregivers are age 50 or older.
Mm-hmm.
But then it goes into 46% of care recipients. Oh, those are recipients. I've got that wrong. Are 75 and older. I thought it
People
was saying the
receiving
caregivers,
care.
but I
So what was
misread it.
that number of
The 54% are 50 plus,
how many million people are operating as caregivers?
53 million.
Because
No, they're talking about unpaid too. It's not that doesn't
so I
include
was
the
looking
profession.
up the population of the US,
Oh, it's that like 300 million.
279.3 million. And you're telling me that 50,
Like what is that, a quarter? No, a third.
no, I'd have to divide the math. Um,
That's, we're doing some math
half
here.
of
No wonder
three
I'm
was
turning red.
150, half of 150 is 75. So less than 25, but it's still a good
Yeah,
20, 15, 20%. of Americans are operating as unpaid caregivers. So I'm assuming that refers to parents
I would
of
imagine
young
at that
children.
age, at 50 plus,
Uh, uh, um,
and then you're
so
talking about,
that's a lot of people,
almost half of them are 75 and over. So
people
that,
that are being cared for.
yes.
Okay. And
But I
then
mean, that means it could be that gives that parent idea, that it's a parent taking care of a parent.
yeah, I just meant back whatever your other statistic. I was trying to figure out if it meant aging people or just caregivers. You said the unpaid family caregivers, if that was referring to people who are caring for children, like as in
No, I mean, they're just talking
minors,
about
or caring just for.
for relatives and friends is what it doesn't,
Okay,
it
so it
isn't
doesn't
talking about,
specify age.
because this is by AARP, so it's
Oh,
really talking,
okay.
that they're part of this, that did this study.
Okay. I'm just discerning if it includes parents in general or not. So it doesn't sound like that number includes just.
Let me see if I'm looking over this to see if there's, I mean, it's got other, it talks about race and ethnicity,
Right.
like 61% are non-Hispanic, Hispanic only like 17%,
The caregivers or the people being cared for.
caregivers. This is all
Okay.
about caregivers there.
So,
And then, this whole thing is about care recipients.
so yeah,
So,
so there's a lot of us out there. A lot of us are over the age of 50 that are caring for aging parents.
well,
Eh,
and 61% are females that are caregivers,
on-
which,
Only 61?
well, again, who knows that
I'm
this,
surprised that it's only
well, I think,
61.
I think that, I feel like that was probably bigger before. I think we're getting to a place now that people are starting to wake up to the fact that it doesn't have to be the daughter or the wife.
Well,
It can be a man can be a caregiver
I
too, and,
see
and needs
that.
to be
I
needs
I
to
see,
step up, in other words.
I meet family members all the time in my work, and sure, there are sons that are very involved in their parents' care, but in my opinion, it seems more like 75% of the
I
time
mean,
it's
it could
women.
be, but I
But
do believe there is a little bit of a starting to, and we're working on trying to change that dynamic too, getting people to get
well,
everybody, siblings all involved to work, to do the help and care.
but in the reality of it, there's still people of my generation and older who stick to kind of those stereotypes of what
Yeah, no,
what what
I'm
people do. This is I was working with a patient. Their their daughter's probably around my age, 50, 60. And it's her father who's been at rehab, and the mother's elderly too, and they found assisted living for them to go live at. They can no longer live in their own home. And she was saying how she's got three siblings, but she's local. I think she has a brother that's local, but she says, my brother has a very busy social life. He's busy doing fantasy football right now. And so these things fall on me. And I'm like, these are the kind of stereotypes. Like,
yeah.
I was like, oh, he has a busy, so he's doing fantasy football. So you're in charge of caring for your
Yeah.
parents. Like, those kind of things are still accepted, even in Generation X, and hopefully not too much in millennials and stuff, but that the women do these things, or the person who doesn't work outside the home, which often means the person with the young children, or it still falls heavily on females. And so,
When you asked me about, it said this has care recipients' relationship to caregiver, and 42% are parent. It's the child that's taking care of a parent.
I meant, I just, whatever. I was wondering if it included statistics of people caring for minors.
Oh, no, this is
No,
all
yeah,
senior stuff.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
no.
So say that statistic again.
Well, this is for caregivers recipient. The relationship to
Yes.
the caregiver, 42% is parents. 12 only 12% is spouse or partner, which,
So, okay, 42% of the time It's you taking care of your parents,
Yeah.
like us. I'm taking care of my mom and
And I'm
dad.
part of an 8% of the parent-in-law.
Ah, parent. Oh,
I fall into that 8%.
parent. Well, I see daughter-in-laws all the time
Yeah.
caring for their, and women still live longer. So a lot of times it's the female, but I've met some really amazing husbands who are caregivers for their spouse, and it's very touching and very precious, which brings up a whole nother. Um, as
Write
we're
that down.
talking about gender, when my dad was in the hospital, the most recent time, one of his CNAs who was awesome, shout out to her, she was really amazing. And I came in and she's like, "Your husband is so great with your dad. He's just so wonderful." And she was just ranting and raving on you. And then you came in and she was going on about how wonderful you were. And it's like, yes, my husband is wonderful and I do appreciate him. And you go the extra mile. And I thought about the fact that do we do that with women?
Yeah.
Does anyone say, "Look at you, Karen"? I mean, I did have where my dad lives, she did say that to me. In the context of me telling her I thought she was amazing with what she does, that she said, "You're pretty amazing yourself." But how often do I
Yeah.
get told that when I'm working with my dad? It's more like, "Oh my God, there she comes. Watch out. She's going to get us in trouble."
Well,
um,
why then?
and it's a double standard. And
Yeah.
so men, you see this with parenting too. Oh, a stay-at-home dad. Oh, you're involved with your kids.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't it wonderful? You take your kids places. It's like you're a parent. It's your job. Women do this all the time. Why is it so amazing that a man is doing it? And so, and the CNA was awesome. And I'm sure I could have actually had this conversation with her about it because I'm sure she would have kind of
Yeah.
stopped
No.
and thought about it. Yet, this is what goes on. This kind of gender stereotyping goes on so much that as a male, you don't realize the privilege, and especially as a white cis male, right, Don, that you walk around with. And, I mean, that's very uplifting to hear how wonderful you're doing with your dad, right? I mean,
Yeah.
how did that feel?
Oh, I know it was felt good, and I have really tried. What I was going to say too is I think on top of all of that, for you, they also knew you were an occupational therapist. So it, maybe there was a little bit of expected, that's just the way she does it, kind of thing too. But
Appreciated me because I'm really good at being nice and getting along with people. And then you don't do your job. I'm going straight to the the head of the business, head of the hospital to get this straightened out.
I even have to watch that.
Um, well, it's amazing. It gets things done. So if you're
Um,
advocating for a loved one, you find the patient advocate at the hospital. You ask to talk to the highest level up supervisor. You call the main hospital number, and it's amazing how quickly things can happen. But just to the context of that women are kind of expected to do this. And so I think that's burnout can really happen because it's expected
mhm.
that we care for our kids, that we care for our parents, and I love doing it. And yet how many people, applaud, and not that I'm looking for applause, but
It doesn't hurt to have that.
and because I'm an occupational therapist stepping in there, it's like, oh, they let me do things that otherwise they wouldn't let other people do. Um, so that kind of adds a whole nother dimension
Yeah,
of then they just assume I'm going to do things. And they don't have to step in and do as much because I'm there, kind of thing. And would they do that, with you? Um, so it's just something I think we need to think about and we need to have this conversation about because in order to change the stereotyping behavior, I mean, this is adding to burnout of women who
mhm.
are doing these roles and it just expected that
Yeah,
this is what you do. Like this poor woman of her brother who's busy with fantasy football and so he doesn't have time to
yeah. That I hear a lot of. I mean, I
go
hear that
visit
too. So
his dad's in rehab, his mom's elderly, they're moving into assisted living and it's all on the one daughter to take care of this.
yeah.
Um,
Well,
like,
some of that comes with, they don't know they don't know how to handle it. They don't know how to handle the emotional part of it, so it scares them. So they don't that,
well,
and
and
I'm not
it's
trying to justify. I'm just saying that that's I think part of it on a male side of it is
They don't know what to
that's
do.
a yeah, they don't know what to do. They feel real uncomfortable around that. They don't like the parent looking like that or act, so
Well, and it's just that nobody questions it.
yeah,
Like nobody questions. And just the way she described it, oh, he has a really busy social life. And like she was justifying why he couldn't help. Like she was almost defending him.
yeah,
And I'm
no.
going,
When I've seen that too, I mean, I've worked with quite a few people going through that, and yeah, the same kind of thing.
it's just,
Well, they're busy, they travel, and they're doing
it's
I'm
just,
like, no,
it's
that,
just accepted.
yeah,
Yeah. And as me being there advocating for the patient and educating, I'm not necessarily in that position to speak up in that moment per se, in my that context of me working in the facility. Yet it's just that people don't even realize, like they're just walking through doing these things, and it doesn't even occur to them that they could ask, and or that, like you said, that they just don't know what to do.
yeah.
And so when people don't know what to do, oh, that they know how to do it. I'll let them handle it.
Well, yeah, I mean, like in my own family, my sister was a nurse practitioner. So I think that was part of what my brothers kind of said, well, she's been working with these people. Well, she's with my mom. She was the one, I tried to help, but we were distant, but I tried to do what I could from distance. But so let's talk about what family caregivers do. And just interesting, the average amount of hours that are spent by a family caregiver is they only have it marked as 23.7 hours
Hours per week.
per week. Yes.
Okay.
They said if it's a person that lives in the home, it be up as high as 37. But that seems low to me because
37
the hours
hours in
will
a
be,
week. Well, you're not always dealing with dementia.
yeah,
So, is somebody who just needs help with their
that's true.
medications
That's
or
true.
getting a
I guess
bath, but they can get themselves
you have to
dressed,
throw that in
there
the
you're
idea
not
of,
spending as much time. Now, if you look statistics of people with dementia
I'm
specifically,
sure the hours are
it would
much more
be
dramatic.
very different. I mean, my mom really only felt like she wasn't if she was out of the house doing something.
Well, and it probably, I would bet that of course, I think it would be natural that it would just increase over time. Even if they didn't start out with dementia, that would get more and more as the anxiety and dementia kind of kick in.
If they don't have dementia.
Well, if they start,
Not
yeah,
everybody develops dementia. So, yeah, some people live, ripe old age and need care, but don't need
yeah, that
care
okay.
for cognition. But so,
So
what
let's
else do caregivers do?
well let's they talk about in here instrumental activities of daily living or IADL. And I know you always talk about ADLs. That was the first I had read or heard about instrumental. So maybe you could talk about the difference between those or
Yeah,
what
sure.
those are.
Activities of daily living. I always want to change occupational therapy to ADL therapy because people think we're helping people find jobs, which there are avenues of OT that deal with that. But it's how you occupy your time, what activities you are occupied with on a daily basis. So, in the aging population, being able to get out of bed, to get dressed, to go to the bathroom, to change your clothes, to take a shower, um, to do all those self-care activities. When you get to instrumental activities of daily living, it's things like home management tasks. Someone who
Hmm.
lives alone, they've got to get themselves breakfast. They've got to be able to reach into the cabinet, get the food out, prepare it safely. They need to manage their own medications, their doctor's appointments, these other activities outside of basic self-care. Um, so, yeah, taking care of the yard, the mail, the anything housework, laundry, cooking, cleaning, shopping.
Driving too, would that be considered,
Yeah, I mean, you're entering the community, so yeah. Do they need to arrange transportation to cat? Don't eat my wire. Um, arrange
that's another
transportation.
IADL is keep the cat away from the
Yes, well,
wires.
and cat care. I mean, there are people with pets. There are
That's
elderly
true.
people who do have care. I've I've addressed that as a goal with people before, like how do I feed the cats or how do I change the cat's water when I can't bend down to the floor?
Um,
So,
that's true.
yeah, anything that's, your basic self-care or your ADLs,
Would safety play in? Would safety be part of IADL too?
safety's everywhere.
So that would be another function or what
What
another thing that.
safety with what?
Well, is the home safe? Is the
Oh,
environment safe,
the
or
environment. I mean, that's
is that no?
it's not really a separate category. When it comes to work I do as an occupational therapist, everything involves safely. My goal is to help people do things more independently and safely.
Yeah.
Those are the two key words. I tell people sometimes I'm the safety police. I'm going to watch everything you're doing. And if you're not doing it the safest way, I'm going to teach you how to. Um,
But I guess would it be checking to see that their house is set up in a
so
safe
that's
manner?
home assessment, home modification. So,
That would be part of what.
well, IADLs are what they're doing,
Yeah.
their activities. So me assessing their home for the safety of it, that's not
Well, it would be about their movement though, wouldn't it? You know, would they be able to move through the house safely? Would they?
right. But that's not really an IADL. Is that what you're
No?
asking me?
Yeah, I guess.
No, an activity of daily living is the things that they're doing.
Well, they're
So
moving every day.
as a therapist, I come in and assess the home environment and say what adaptations and environmental modifications do we need. That's something that I'm doing as the assessing, evaluating therapist. So what they're doing is they need to be able to get around their house safely. They need to be able
Yeah.
to manage the TV control and bring their food on, their walker just because they like to sit and eat in front of the TV. That's an IADL, the activity that they are
Yeah.
doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I
That's, I mean, I just think so. So an assessment is done either with either of those, right? With IADLs or ADLs.
so as far as when I assess people for therapy
If
services,
they can still, if they want to still live independently and they've been in the rehab for, uh, maybe they fell and broke the hip or
when
something.
someone first comes to the therapy, I assess what their prior level of function was. So that involves where did you live before? Did you have anyone helping you as a caregiver? What things did you do for yourself? Did you drive? Who took you to appointments? Did you do your own medicines? So that I know what previously their prior level of function was able to do, because our goal is to get them back towards that level. So someone who lived alone was shopping, was cooking their own meals, doing their medicines. Those are things that need to be addressed so that they can return to those activities, versus someone who has a, you know, 24/7 caregiver in the home and does their medicines, does their meals, helps them with getting dressed and going to the bathroom. Then you have different goals. Does that answer that question?
Yes.
Okay. You got busy doing some other things, and
I'm just looking at, I'm looking for the next thoughts that I've had, but
ah,
that's okay. No, I was listening to it at the same time.
these things just, to me, I did like it helps me to have you ask the questions because this is just my everyday life, and
Yeah,
to
I
me,
was
it's
gonna
just like
say.
it all just makes sense. And
And I mean, I see it every day too from you, but I don't take it all in, or I don't hear all of it. So this is learning
well,
for
yeah,
me
you're
too.
not there with me as
No,
I'm
I know,
working. You see
but I
it.
hear the stories when you come home.
Yeah, but it's very different than being like as you've been with my dad and having
Yeah,
to
no,
step
I
in
know. Oh gosh,
and be
I've had to
there
do from top to bottom with him,
and
and
helping him out and
yeah.
seeing how much can be involved. And
Well, and see how much we have to advocate and be on top of help, the staff and all, and not to get the staff, they're wonderful people, and I'm not, but you do have to really, help them along too, because well, they're short staffed and they're,
well, and the
so
way these corporations are set up, like any other American business, there are people who own the companies who are usually making plenty of money. And then there are all the paid workers underneath them who sometimes are barely getting by.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the people with the least amount of education are the ones who are spending the most time with the patients. When you're looking at a healthcare setting, the people with the most experience in education are often have the least amount of time with the
Yeah.
patients. Your RNs, your registered nurses who have maybe a bachelor of science in nursing, they're the administrators, they're the director of nursing, they're the supervisors. The
Yeah.
people giving out the medications aren't sometimes in a hospital setting, they're often a nurse, but in a nursing home, an assisted living facility,
CNA,
they're often what's called a med tech. So
a med
they're a
tech.
certified nursing assistant, but they have specialized training in medications. Um, and then the people giving the care, hopefully they're certified nursing assistants. And yet, that doesn't require a college degree. It's a certification. It doesn't require an associate's degree. And, obviously the more they're on the job and involved, and if they have opportunities to be educated and to learn more things about dementia, as an occupational therapist, I have to do 15 hours every year of continuing education. That's the North Carolina law. I'm not sure what's required of nursing assistants, and that would be a
That's
great interview to have.
let me write that down.
I worked as a nursing assistant right before I went to college. So this is 1988 in Pennsylvania, and it wasn't required I be a certified nursing assistant at that time period. So I learned just on the job at a private facility working with individuals who needed long-term care, a lot of kind of younger adults, things with multiple sclerosis and spinal cord injuries and those kinds of injuries.
When you talk about nurse assistant, you're talking about what they classify as CNA, right?
Yes.
So is that
Certified
certified?
nursing assistant. So they do a training. They do a training
Yeah.
for that. And to become a nurse, at least the places I'm aware of, you have to be a nursing assistant first.
Yeah.
We have our daughter's friend, went through training and she went to school. She got an associate's degree. I
Is
think
that
she got a bachelor's degree at Victoria.
is that oh,
And so, they have to work as nursing assistants first. This is why I love nurse practitioners because they were first a nurse, and in order to be a nurse, they had to be a nursing assistant. So they understand all the levels of care. And then they went on to become a nurse. And if to be a nurse practitioner, I'm pretty sure that involves your master's degree.
yeah,
So they
my
have
sister
done
was a
a lot of hands-on, a lot of education. They've worked at all these different levels. And now they're operating as a nurse practitioner who is a provider who can prescribe medications, who can work in accordance with a doctor. You also have physician's assistants who operate in similar
mhm.
level, but they haven't gone through everything a nurse has gone
Yeah.
through. And not that there aren't very qualified PAs out there, physician's assistants, yet nurse practitioners have a whole nother level of understanding because they get the training that a nurse gets,
Hmm.
which is
Plus,
very different than the training a doctor gets. And I'm not sure what a PA gets. I think it's a master's degree program, but I'm not entirely sure.
they kind of touch upon what a doctor, the doctor training in a way.
Touch upon?
Well, they
Who?
have. Well, my sister was
Well,
a,
yeah,
a
no, that's
nurse
what I mean.
practitioner, and they're
They operate, yes, but so do physicians' assistants. They operate at that level. They prescribe medications. They operate as a provider. Yeah.
okay.
But I'm saying that because they've had all this other
Yeah. Well,
training
no,
and
I
all this
that.
other experience, it just, yeah, they just, I don't know. I've just really had good experiences
Boy,
in knowing.
I've had nurse practitioners for my primary care before, and really, yeah, I do enjoy them. They spend more time with you too. That
Well, they have the
versus,
training of nursing care.
yeah,
Doctors don't get that kind of training.
yeah.
It's a very different education.
So we're going down a
Little
different
a
path
little
here,
rabbit
but
hole.
we probably need to maybe do a
And if you
podcast
if you
on
know
that.
people who are physician's assistants, nurse practitioners, nursing
Send them our way.
assistants, yeah,
We'd love to have them on
we'd
and
love to
talk
have them
about
on. And
this.
I know people that I can reach out to and ask about interviewing. But yes, we'd love to have these conversations and we'd love to have these discussions. And my purpose here is just to educate and inform people, right? I'm not trying to diss anyone's
Yeah,
profession. I'm
no,
just
well, no, they're
explaining the difference is
they
in
have
it.
so many challenges, all those
And
different
that's how we got
levels.
talking about it is the system is not ideal.
Yeah,
You sign up your loved one, whether it's short-term rehab or to live in either a skilled nursing, assisted living, independent living, memory care, and you expect good care, and then you see things the way they're happening and you're not happy. Well, why is that? Well, the ratio of nurses or staff really to patients, these are questions to ask. And why is it that way? It's the way the corporation is set up.
Yeah.
And sure, there's huge overhead in providing for the building. But this is where our older daughter would say, capitalism, capitalism.
Yeah.
There's someone who owns the company who's sitting pretty in his BMW or whatever. And, I have real issues with that working in healthcare. I have real issues when I get a pay cut and they're getting bonuses.
Yeah.
And,
Well,
the people that are there without us, without, the therapist and the nursing assistants caring for these patients, this business would not operate.
yeah.
And so why is it?
Well, it's when it went from nonprofit to profit that it changed. That was a change that hospitals aren't
Oh,
at
well, I
back in
don't
the
know what things operated like because there are nonprofit agencies
oh
that
yeah,
operate.
there are some
Well,
nonprofit
where
hospitals too,
where
but
the rehab up here is nonprofit company, but they still have these challenges.
yeah,
They still, well, in some facilities, if you're dealing with Medicare reimbursement or Medicaid paying for the services, and you're talking about the limited amount of funding that's being
yeah.
provided through the health insurance companies, through the government agencies, that's also affecting this level of care. And so when you see things not going the way you want, how can you step in and help? How can you support, the paid caregivers? What things can we do? Because they are really trying their best. Sure, you're going to have people who are like, why are you in this job? You don't seem to like people. You
Well,
don't
yeah,
seem to
there are
like
those, but
older people.
you know,
You're going to find those people. And think about it. You find that in everywhere and every different
because
job.
when what we're seeing with your dad, I think every one of those caregivers that are in the staff that are in that unit have been they're caring. They come up, John, how you doing? And what? And
When
then
he was in the hospital, how's your dad doing?
yeah, all
How's he
that.
doing? What's
So
going on?
yeah,
And
to remember, yeah, advocate for him, and talk to him and get them to do the things they need to do, but do it in a compassionate way. Don't have to yell and scream at them.
well, and
Being
realizing
understanding of what they're going through too.
and their limitations and realizing there are limits to what they can do. And even though it costs a lot of money to live in memory care, North Carolina, it seems like it's between six and $10,000 a month.
Yeah,
you know, um, and you can be like, wow, I go visit my dad and I'm still taking him to the bathroom and helping him clean up and cleaning up his room and picking up dirty laundry. And yet I know the reality of you've got a unit of 16 people with dementia and you've got two nursing assistants on the hall and,
yeah.
the med tech. And when the nurse supervisor's there, occasionally you have some extra people. It's a lot to do. It's a lot of different care that is involved. And yeah,
So let's bring this back because we really kind of well we're talking about the two different sides of family versus professional. I kind of like to come back to the family part of it because one of the things they talk about in this article is about um, having a parent home, especially somebody that dealing with dementia, being at home can be a better choice for them for a lot of reasons, but it also has the downside of it. So maybe we can talk about those two different sides of it.
and I can talk, yes, greatly about this. So, like I just explained, that as nice as some of these facilities are that get the high rating, that have the better staff to patient ratios, there's still limitations of what they can do. They have to get to know each resident. They don't know the personality of the person. They have other people that they have to care for as well. And it's like you go in the emergency room. If you're not a deadly emergency, you're not going to get the quickest attention. So what is the most dire
As I said, the
attention
emergency.
is what is who gets taken care of in some of those moments, right? So it's an affordability, And also, do you have a person who's capable of providing that care? It costs money too to pay for caregivers to come in the home,
Hmm.
but it also typically it's $20 an hour, at least in the North Carolina area. And a lot of places they want to work at least 4 hour shifts because they want to get paid.
Well, and to travel some to your house
Right.
kind of thing.
And some
So,
places, do just 8 hour shifts because, that person, this is their job. They need to be able to work. And so it can be frustrating. Like, I only need someone for 2 hours at a time. Well, finding that can be difficult because when people work for agencies, they often want to work enough hours to make it worth their while. So, and
but having them at home, it's
you
a
can
familiar
provide their because
environment.
as soon as you change the environment to any person, especially older than 60, 65, and if you have dementia, it just heightens it. It just sets off more confusion. You're in the hospital, new people around you, new surroundings, the environment's set up. Which side you get out of the bed is different. How you walk to the bathroom is different. And so all these changes in moving people around.
Well, and think about like your dad. My gosh, he's been, you know, moved into the assisted, not the memory care unit.
Mhm,
So he's moved out of his house, so he's different place. Then he goes and ends up in the hospital,
mhm.
another different place. Then he ends up in rehab,
Well,
another different place,
he's in the emergency room first, and then
Oh
he
yeah,
goes to a
emergency room.
regular room in the
So yeah,
hospital,
so oh
and
my
then
God,
he goes,
the multiple changes, multiple rooms, multiple different people,
um,
and no, no wonder can have his
well,
confusion
and
at
years
times.
ago, when my dad's dementia started um, being an issue, for a while he had what we call more of a mild cognitive impairment, where it wasn't really affecting his daily functioning as much. Um, my family members, my brother and sister would be like, they have these places where you have multi-levels of care, independent living, assisted, and they would bring this up and they'd bring this up. And I'd be like, as long as my mom can afford to have him at home and bring in caregivers, that's a better option. And I told them this for quite a few years until it got to the point where it just felt like it was affecting my mom's health as she's getting older too. And my dad's needs are getting more intense, and his behaviors continued with him darting out of the house and other things. It got to the point where it just was very taxing on her to maintain this at home. And with their relationship, if she was home, she said my dad would follow her around the house. So some people can bring a caregiver in and let the caregiver do the primary thing. People are all different, right? We all have different personalities. We all have different relationships with things. And so it affects things, right? And yet, where are you going to get the best care? You're going to get the best care at home. You're going to get the best care with a private caregiver who you're paying. And I've heard people complain. They just come in and they just sit there and they do nothing. Well, find somebody different,
Yeah.
find somebody different. The caregivers my mom had were amazing at the house. One of them helped her do cleaning and would clean up dishes and put things away. And they engaged with my dad. They took him outside. They did activities with him, just spent some time with him, talking to him. A lot of people, that's, what they need. They want someone to have a conversation. I go in and people to see them for therapy, and they might not want to get out of bed or do any exercises, but they certainly want to have a conversation with me and they want to keep me there. The one lady this past weekend, um, I went in and talked to her about therapy and what the goals were and what I was coming to do with her. And she said, well, I don't really want to do that, but I don't want you to leave.
So yeah, they're lonely. I
And
mean, they get that there's not much to do in these, a lot of times, and unless they have a good activity director or something. But
then even then it's, even if you
there's
have a
not a whole lot
if
that,
you have a couple activities going on in a day, and you're going to meals, it's still not yeah, it's still not, being able to just get out and talk with people and that. So yeah, I mean, it's if you're able to keep someone in the home with some caregivers, but yet it's also the responsibility there, right? There's so many
oh yeah.
factors that are involved in this, which if you have questions about this, and because people are also different and family situations are different, financial situations are different, um, long-term care insurance, from my understanding, can be a really good thing, just to throw that out there. Someone else we can interview and talk about. I'd love to consult with you. I would love to be there to help walk you through some of these challenges, no matter where you're at on the journey, just because of my professional experience and all the experiences I'm having with my father, which are kind of adding to the list lately, to help you navigate this. And that's what my Ask the OT is about. So glad you joined us here talking about caring for aging loved ones, talking about the paid caregivers, professional caregivers versus family caregivers. We'd love to hear your thoughts, your comments. Reach out to us, send us a message, comment here. Please also share this podcast with anyone who you know who might be interested. Focused Healthy Family, we have covered topics from foster parenting to raising young children to teenagers and caring for aging loved ones, and kind of that whole juggling act of,
The sandwich generation, basically.
yes, and managing all these different topics. So check out our other podcasts. You can search them up by topic and find out other things to share with other people. We are always looking for people to have discussions with, people to interview, just having candid conversations with people who've gone through these similar experiences. And we've done some of that here. You can see some of those podcasts here if you're here on YouTube and you get to watch our silly antics, or you can listen to us anywhere that you listen to a podcast. And also check out Don's EFT resources. Don, tell us about your EFT resources.
Well, I do a monthly tapping group, 2 to 3 times a month. I do free EFT tapping groups. I also have a individual practice of doing the emotional freedom techniques tapping process. And then, of course, I incorporate the EFT into Gina and I's practice together. So, yes, I help people get past the anxieties and stresses and what we've talked about today, being a family caregiver or a professional
There's a lot
caregiver.
of anxiety
A
and
lot of
stresses.
anxiety.
I've learned EFT level 1 and 2 training myself, but I'm also working with a EFT practitioner who's helping me.
Yeah, well, there's guilt, there's anxiety, there's all kind burnout, all of that.
Trying to juggle all of it.
I work with that, but I also work with parents in that are raising kids and all the anxieties and stuff that go with that. So yes,
Where can we all learn more about this, Don?
at focusedhealthyfamily.com, of course.
Find us on Facebook, find us on Instagram, YouTube, Focused Healthy Family, and join us every Thursday when we drop one of these podcasts. Also, our Ask the OT that we are doing through YouTube, you can reach out to us to join us live. You can go onto the channel and message us, or you can send questions in advance. This is something I've been doing now a couple times a month to answer questions about caring for aging loved ones and all that entails. The next Ask the OT will be this Wednesday. We are airing this podcast Thursday, Don, and so you will not know about that. The next one will be
September 4th.
Wednesday, September 4th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We often do them as well at noontime, often on Wednesdays and often Monday evenings, but with Labor Day, we're going to do one Wednesday evening, September 4th at 7 p.m. But you can reach out to us ahead of time with questions. You can watch these after the fact.
Well, here's
on our YouTube channel.
Another thought about it too. Maybe you don't know the questions, and maybe you want to share the situation you're in, and we'll help you figure out what the questions are and where the answers may be.
Well, and just check out some of the ones that we've done, because we record them all. And so you can see them. We're done on YouTube. You can see the Ask the OTs on YouTube, and you can get to know me a little bit and hear the things that I have to say, because I do this, giving some support and help for people. And yet, to really get into in more depth and to really help you one-on-one with something, that's what my consultation services are about, to do for you what I've been doing for my dad, and to do it outside of the healthcare system so that I can really spend the time with you. And to give you this information and to know the questions, like you said, to ask. So join us on Ask the OT.
And remember, how you speak to your children and your family shapes their future and yours.